But when I choose to be kind, it's an active choice that I get to make. And then when if just somebody wants to take advantage of that, I say no. And I think it's an important thing because when you say no, you're being kind to yourself.
Yeah.
When you say no to something that you don't genuinely get joy from, you're drawing a boundary and saying, no, I feel like you're taking advantage of me and I don't feel comfortable with that. That's when you're actually giving yourself room to be kind more to other people. Because then you're not giving away all your energy to those you might not feel deserve it. And instead, you can direct your energy to give to those who you feel like you want to generally lift up. Those who can lift up others are never weak.
Yeah.
But those who fall because other people demand them to fall cannot be strong. That's my
Welcome back to the Max Out Show, where today I'm joined by John Wang, founder of the One Kindness Challenge that has inspired thousands of people to spread joy and kindness with the people around them. Kindness has been shown to create a massive boost for your happiness, business, and love life. So I'm excited to dive deep into science and practice of spreading kindness. So John, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Mac. It's an honor to be here.
And I'm super excited to have you. I can feel the energy. I can feel the joy that, we're talking about like the best biohack in the world, right? I can feel like how that's actually working for you. So I'm really excited for this chat. And so before, to really underscore the importance of what we're actually talking about here, can you share the story? And it's a really morbid one of the guy that jumped from Golden Gate Bridge and how one small act of kindness could have transformed that person's life.
Yeah, this is a story that I remember and I remind myself of often. This is a number of years ago. There was a man who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and was a victim of suicide. He was investigated afterwards by the police, and they wanted to find out, why he had, done such a terrible thing. And they went to his house, and they found that on his desk, on his bureau, there was a suicide note. And he wrote, "Today I will walk to the Golden Gate Bridge, but if one person along the way stops and smiles at me, I will not jump." Now, we actually don't know, if he ever encountered any of that, but that particular message always lingered to me because obviously we talk about kindness a lot. And, before I started this whole challenge, I always had this idea that kindness is this like big thing you have to do. Like, you take a month to go and volunteer at a shelter, or you sacrifice your weekends to all these kind of things, but we don't realize that, kindness isn't about the size of the act, it's about the size of the impact.
Yeah.
And when I think about my daily life, if somebody had just taken the time to smile at him, ask him how his day was, what could have happened? What might have changed? And I think this is something we should keep in mind, because really in our every single day, how many opportunities do we have to change someone's life like that? We don't think about it like that.
Yeah.
We think about these big, massive things, but we don't think that a smile or a compliment can have a massive influence on somebody's day.
Yeah, what I find so fascinating about this idea is that it lowers the sort of barrier for entry, right? Like we think we need to expend so much effort to do something grandiose for other people. But the reality is everybody, every single day of our lives have the chance to do these little things, right? And for our listeners, you've probably experienced this before in your life, right? Where you smiled at someone or someone else, a stranger smiled at you, right? And it just changes your whole day, right? It can be this small little thing.
Tiny. It's crazy. I think everyone can think of but for me in particular, at some point, I think when I was a teenager, somebody once paid attention and complimented my hairstyle.
Wow, yeah.
And for 3 years afterwards, I never changed it. It's just one of those things. Right? So it's such a small thing. We don't realize how big of a thing a compliment can have on our lives. But we can all remember a thing like that. We can remember somebody complimenting us on, something we wear. There's a T-shirt probably in my closet that I still can't throw away because at some point somebody said a nice thing about it. Yeah, it's such a small thing can have such a massive impact.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. There's this one moment also that sticks out particularly in my life, which is I was running about probably 6 or 7 years ago, right? I was back home in my hometown. It was Christmas time. I was running through the snow and the rain, right? It was a freezing day. and I got injured, right? And so it's like I was sort of standing on the side of the road, and at some point just sat down and sort of like, almost gave up on life. I was like, oh my God, I'm injured. Like, what is it gonna be, right? And like this one car just drives by, and the person stops like 20 meters behind me and starts to slowly roll back. And I was like, oh my God, like someone's gonna stop and actually, someone actually cares. And so I waved. I was like, no, I'm good, right? I never saw that person's face, but that one moment of seeing that a stranger cared, was willing to just stop, and even took him 10 seconds only, right? But that moment, and like yours, right? It stuck with me for the rest of my life so far. Mm-hmm. And so really, like what I guess we're trying to get at is like, it is so easy to make another person's day, right?
Massively. So yeah. A friend of mine, he's a genius at this. Yeah. And he came up with a saying, which is, so his name is Mark Antony, and every single day he'll walk around, and when he encounters somebody who's working at like, a grocery store or a stranger on the street, he'll oftentimes stop, or like he encounters a waiter at a restaurant, and he'll stop and he'll ask him a question. He'll ask, has someone told you lately that you're appreciated?
Wow.
And I've gotten his permission to borrow and use this, and I've started using this, and I can't tell you how massive this one little saying has been. One time I was remembering, I was at a shopping center, and I was just sitting at the food courts we have here. We have food courts, and I think I was just sitting there. I was like eating like a bowl of noodles or something like that. And then, one of the cleaning ladies come by and like want to ask, to take my tray. And I said, of course, here. And I thought of this quote, and I stopped her and I asked her, hey, has somebody told you lately that you're appreciated? Wow. And she just paused, and without saying anything else, tears started running down her eyes.
Wow.
And she grabbed her mouth and she grabbed her chest, and I didn't know what to say. I was like, oh my God, I made this poor person cry. Like, oh my God, like, what do I say to the prayer? And then she just smiled, and she just smiled at me, and she's like, thank you. And that's all she said. And I asked, this was all before COVID, of course. I asked her, can I give you a hug? And that's it. I started crying, and the two of us just hugged, crying, like, in the shopping center. And we never talked after that. Like, she never told me what she was going through, but clearly it was a lot.
Yeah.
And clearly, and I can't take any credit for it, because at the end of the day, all I did was show something I think all of us feel.
Yeah.
But we forget about. And yeah, it's something such as simple as the experience you went through, as a car stopping and showing care. That's what we're here for. That's what we're alive for.
Yes.
To be connected, to share.
I can literally feel it in your words. So what do you think is this thing that stops people? If we're all feeling that, and I truly believe we are, what do you think like stops people from sort of externalizing that and then telling people like how they actually feel, how appreciative they actually feel?
It's a great question, Max. I think really it comes down to, we have fears about how we'll be perceived. When I started this challenge, it was actually a tough thing. You would think going on. So I started this one kindness challenge. It's a very simple idea, is you go and do an act of kindness every day for 30 days. And that's all, just a small, no matter how small. It could be opening the door for someone. It could be paying someone a compliment. It could be sending, someone you knew in the past who helped you, just a thank you message. And the funny thing is, when I first started doing this challenge, I realized for the first time how difficult it was to do acts of kindness for people. Yeah. People get defensive. People get suspicious almost. And of course, I understand that. I'm not suggesting, one of the things that we did was on Valentine's Day, we went around and we gave out, roses to strangers on the street, just passing out. It's me and a few friends just going around passing out roses. And so many people would refuse us or ask, like, I don't understand. What are you selling? And like, is this cost money? Like, I don't have any money.
To pay afterwards.
No. It's just because it's Valentine's Day, and I want to give you a rose because I just want to give it to you. I just want to give. And so many people came up. I had people chase me down after like a block and was like, no, I can't take this. I thought about it. We can't take this. Please take this back. And we're like, no, we'll take it if you don't want it, but
we don't want it back. So.
Go enjoy it, or even better, give it to someone else.
Yeah.
Give it to someone you care about. Such small things. Wow. I think we're afraid and And I think that we've been conditioned to believe that kindness is about, you know, is almost like a niceness. It's like a weakness. Like kind people aren't strong. I think that we have these stories we built up. And of course, I believe in the opposite. I think kindness is a show of strength, right? Because if you can be kind enough to make someone's life different, if that's not a superpower to change someone's life and mood, to possibly, and I realize that's an extreme case, there's a story that we started with, but to save a life, you know, to make someone's day better, if that's not strength, I don't know what is.
You know, this is really something that I've observed in all the truly great people I've met in my life. It's like they care so much about other people. They're not stuck in like their own ego, right? They're not stuck in their own thoughts and like wanting to feel good and wanting to, you know, look good and look strong to other people. But they care so deeply, so much about other people. And that to me is true strength, right? When like you're so comfortable with yourself that you don't have to talk about yourself anymore all the time. You don't have to, you know, look cool in front of other people anymore. You're just like so focused on making other people happy. And that is 100%. Such a beautiful thing. And you can like feel that energy in those kind of people, right? They're just so focused on giving. Like they truly experience that happiness themselves. And I think that is another key point here, right? Is that like, this also makes you happy, not just the other person, right? So
that's it.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the benefits that people get, you know, for all those, you know, selfish people listening to us right now? They're like, I don't really care about other people. Like, why should people care about like giving kindness for themselves?
Oh, I mean, I that's the funny thing, you know, we, so I think everyone is kind at heart, but you're absolutely right. It's true. You know, we care about ourselves, and I'm a big believer. I think this always makes people kind of get shocked when I tell about this. I say, be kind selfishly. Be kind selfishly. It doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter what your intention is. It doesn't matter what your intention is, because at the end of the day, you are benefiting other people. But more importantly is that kindness is supposed to be benefiting ourselves. In the same way that loving somebody else is also about benefiting ourselves. And yet we don't have any issue with that. You know, at the end of the day, there's so much science behind this. There's what we call the neuroscience and the neurochemistry behind kindness. When I first started this challenge, one of the first things I did, because I'm a bit of a skeptic in a lot of ways. You know, I like to look at what's the science behind something, what are the studies, what's the research, what's the hard, cold facts that show how this thing will benefit not just each other, but our lives. And I think we believe we see selfishness as such a dirty word, but we realize that everything in our society is based around mutual benefit. Everything that works, that can have exponential change, that could shift the world in some way, is about mutual benefit. So the science behind kindness is this: when you go and act or do an act of kindness, no matter how small, we have built within our body, in our brain, this thing called the vagus nerve. It is one of the largest nerve spans that just starts at the base of our spine. And whenever you feel that kind of warm and fuzzy feeling, when you fall in love with somebody, when you see, like, watch a video of, like, I don't know, like for me, it's like cute puppies, right? Like, cute cats and cute puppies, and we feel that warmth. So that is that experience of our vagus nerve basically being activated. And what we're feeling is actually a serotonin release that goes through our brain. So when we do an act of kindness for other people, we actually experience a serotonin increase. And scientists over at a number of different leading universities have done the research to show that when we experience this type of serotonin rush, this thing that they call the helper's high, the kindness high, so to speak, it actually lingers within us for a number of days. So we get happier when we perform an act of kindness. And I think everyone who's, you know, have ever done something, which is that all of your listeners have probably experienced it at some point in their lives. But what is fascinating about this is that it has tons of auxiliary benefits. It helps you live longer. It literally, we've seen studies that literally show people living 10 years longer than their peers when they do things like volunteer work.
Wow, yeah.
It's massive.
That is incredible.
It lowers your chance of heart disease. It lowers your stress levels. It lowers all of these other stress-induced issues in your body. And it's such a simple, basic thing of just being kind to other people.
Yeah, I find this idea of the helper's high so fascinating. People, can probably relate to the runner's high that so many of our listeners have probably heard of and experienced, right? And this is very similar, that it creates almost the exact same neurochemistry, right? Without having to actually get off the couch and move. I mean, sort of move to help out, but not in a painful way, at least. And I find this so fascinating how like the brain, as you say, actually changes as a result of us performing something kind to other people.
Mm-hmm. We are rewiring our brain every time we do it. Yeah. It's a fascinating study. If you go to my website, I posted a bunch of these research documents, but just to kind of quote a couple, the main ones, the main experiences that we generally go through is we've seen the way that kindness has actually been able to help, I will say, in 4 major categories. The first one is it's scientifically proven it makes you happier, but I think we can all experience this. Anytime you do something, you could probably remember a time when you've done an act of kindness and you've noticed how you felt afterwards. It's like everything is lightened. So this is the result of that kindness high at work. But then we've also seen studies that show that kindness makes you more attractive. So there's one particular, like two basically romantic interests, right? Yeah. So there's one study in particular that looked at 60 different countries and 10,000 participants, where they found that acts of kindness is actually the leading source of attraction in the opposite sex. So they found out it was more so than financial wealth. Yeah, so like being kind is actually sexier, so to speak, than being rich or being hot. Yeah. And then we also see that kindness does things like it helps you live longer, it lowers your stress level, as I previously talked about, it lowers your chance of getting heart disease, it lowers your stress level, it lowers sleep deprivational problems. And also the final thing is they found that companies and organizations that have kindness-based initiatives essentially make more money. They're much better off because they don't have as much employee turnover. And of course, if you take a look at a lot of companies that are very major, about Tom's Shoes being one of the most famous examples, in which when you buy a pair of shoes, they gift a pair of shoes. Something like that has shown tremendous impact on the well-being of even businesses. So truly, when I say kindness is a biohack, I genuinely mean it. The inherent, one of the most important things of kindness is, of course, is when you show kindness to others, we reflect upon ourselves, and it's also from of self-compassion. And that's a massive superpower that helps us feel better and live longer, reduces stress, reduces our cortisol levels, and find overall sense of calm kind of takes over.
Yeah, there's so much interesting stuff in there. In fact, you also quote one research study on your website that talks about just remembering kindness, right, can actually lower cortisol levels, right? So you don't actually have to do something. You just think back to like, oh, last week I did that thing.
Yeah. It's absolutely, yeah. So when basically there was a study done where they found out that the serotonin spike could also be induced, albeit at a slightly lesser level, but still like quite significantly, from remembering an act of kindness, from thinking about an act of kindness. So that act of kindness is exponentially outpaying. Exponentially it benefits our lives.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. Also, when you talk about like this attractiveness issue, I think this is gonna blow some people's minds, right? And like being attractive is actually sexier, like you said, than finances, and then actually being hot. And I think this goes back to a larger point, right? Which is like the person that people want to be around is the nicest person, is the person that like actually gives, is the person that actually cares, is the person that tries to lift other people up. And I think at the end of the day, like that's the person that most of us aspire to be like, right? We want to be that person that is that hero of our own story, that is that hero in our family that is there for other people, that is that great friend that always like lifts everybody up and cheers everybody up, right? And so it is that kindness that actually builds this attractiveness, both romantically and then also in our everyday relationships.
Exactly. But it makes a lot of sense, when we think about it. If you encounter, of course, I think we all know that kindness is attractive. I think what was a shock for me when I first read that study was that it was seen as the #1 most attractive trait. But then upon thinking about it and reading a little more in the study, I thought it made perfect sense. When you see somebody who goes around and they do kind things regularly, they're giving money to, people who are in need, or they're supporting other people, or they offer and volunteer to help other people, what does that show us? It shows us, one, that they live fairly abundantly, that they have enough resources to help, and they're not living in a like, you know, Scrooge McDuck kind of like, oh, I'm afraid, like penny pinching, I'm afraid to give away anything because I have to keep it all to myself, this selfish mentality. But more importantly, I think, is also that we also look from our own personal benefit, unconsciously or consciously, is that, you know, if you're around someone, you know you can trust them to take care of the people around them. You know that they're not going to be selfish. You know that they're going to be giving to you as well as those that you care about. And you could trust that this person is powerful enough and giving enough and selfless enough that they'll make a good partner in the long run. So I would say, yes, of course. And we don't have to be saints. And, you know, I am one of the first things I always love telling people and reminding myself is I'm only human. You know, we all make mistakes. We all have imperfections. But the beauty of kindness is that you can reset every morning. And a single act can benefit somebody else, then why not?
Yeah, the beauty of this is, like, if you bring this positive intention to this every day, right? You have so many opportunities, and what you just said, like, is, and again, I think I really want to underscore this, is like that, like, kindness is a sign of strength, not weakness. It is a sign of being able to control yourself and control your circumstances, and also then above and beyond yourself, take care of other people. And I find that such a beautiful thing, that you're not just stuck in your own head and stuck in your own fears and anxieties, but you can venture out of that and actually change someone else's life. And so I think this is really a paradigm shift for people, right? Because, like, even you know, leading up to this interview, I was texting some friends and, like, telling about, like, this research on, like, attractiveness, and you know, like, just because I thought it was super interesting, right? And, like, one of the first things I heard back is like, but it can be weakness, right? I think that is like one big fear in people's mind, is that, like, when they're too kind, they're afraid that, like, people are gonna step on them and people are gonna take advantage of them. So how do you, like, find that balance between, you know, being like this incredibly kind person, but then also, you know, having the ability to also maybe say stop sometimes and be like, hey, I'm not gonna, you know, run to the, you know, copy, like, for the 5th time today for you just because you're too lazy to do it yourself. So how do you, you find that balance?
That's such a great question, Max. Such a beautiful question. Okay, so there's something that I want to draw a distinction between. Is I feel like there's a difference between being nice and being kind. Being kind is an active expression of compassion. Being nice is more passive. Like, when we think about being nice, what is being nice? Being nice, we associate it with somebody who's, like, you know, the quote unquote nice guy, right? They're generally kind of like doormats. You know, they don't have boundaries. When somebody tells them to do something, they go, okay, I'll go do it. But that's not actually coming from a kind place. See, oftentimes niceness can come from, I'm not saying this, of course, of anyone who is nice is all like this, but oftentimes the association, the real weakness is a lack of boundaries, is somebody who does it because they want to avoid confrontation or they want to make other people like them. And that's a very important point. I say give selfishly. I say be kind selfishly, because I want to make a point that, no, like, be kind out of your genuine desire to help others. Not so other people will like you. Don't do it just to become popular or have people say, oh yeah, like, you know, that John, he's such a nice guy. I'm like, I'm just you. You know, I say this, like, I'm not the kind person. Just that, you know, I have other things in my life. I have flaws. I get angry. I get grumpy. I have moods. I'm human, just like everyone else. But when I choose to be kind, it's an active choice that I get to make. And then when if somebody wants to take advantage of that, I say no. And I think it's an important thing, because when you say no, you're being kind to yourself. When you say no to something that you don't genuinely get joy from, you're drawing a boundary and saying, no, I feel like you're taking advantage of me and I don't feel comfortable with that. That's when you're actually giving yourself room to be kind more to other people. Because then you're not giving away all your energy to those you might not feel deserve it. And instead, you can direct your energy to give to those who you feel like you want to generally lift up. Those who can lift up others are never weak. But those who fall because other people demand them to fall cannot be strong. That's my perspective of the difference between niceness and kindness.
absolutely love that. I think it opens like the door to a whole nother discussion, which is like this aspect of kindness to yourself, right? Because just like you can be kind to other people, you can treat yourself in the same way, right? And I see so many people out there, right? They struggle so much with like saying a kind word with like about themselves, right? They struggle so much with having like a negative self-image, right? Of saying like, because like this thing happened to me in the past, or kids like in high school called me ugly or stupid, and they keep this thing with themselves, right? And they struggle all the time so much to be just kind and not like positive and loving to themselves. So what have you learned about also applying this to our own lives and being like, hey, I'm just like everybody else, I got to be kind to myself?
Oh, absolutely. So there's a concept we call sort of self-compassion. And there's been, of course, tons of studies done about the importance of it. Now, I think in recent years, we've started to realize its importance. We talk about self-care. Even though I think a lot of people might have the misconception of self-care, they think like, oh, self-care is laziness or something like that. And it really isn't. It's kind of like tending to gassing up your car. If you have a car, it needs to have gasoline or electricity to run. So it's important to make sure that you're gassing up your car regularly. So the way that I take a look at it is, we can't have the ability to give to others if our own cup isn't full, right? If our own cup isn't full. So I oftentimes would say, well, look, be kind to others, but first make sure that your own cup is being filled. So you're not just filling other people's cups. Otherwise, you're going to run out very quickly and you're going to experience a form of burnout. Where you crash and you're going to feel like very tired and very, disconnected from other people. And we want to avoid that. Self-kindness is the recognition that you deserve kindness as much as anyone else. There's been people who I've spoken to who are like, well, I try to be kind to everybody else, but, and then they'll badmouth themselves. They'll say these terrible things. They'll say, I'm lazy, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not strong enough. And I go, well, when was the last time you were kind to yourself? Would you say this to your friend? And I'll ask them this, like, if you get, do you have kids? Would you say this to your child? Would you let somebody else say this to their child? Would you let somebody else say this to your friend? And they're like, no, of course not. I would never let anybody say that to my friend. I'm like, well, why are you saying it to yourself? And it's a funny thing that we don't remember often enough, that if we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't contribute to those around us. We have to be there. We have to make sure that our own cup is full. So this is why I say, once again, go out there, do acts of kindness, but also make sure that you're also spending as much time on yourself, giving to yourself. This might be in the form of, taking a walk, reading a book, making sure you have time. Write in your journal, reflect the things you like about yourself.
Yes.
I think that's give yourself a compliment. I have a notebook. I have a notebook somewhere around here where I keep a book of, no joke.
Yeah,
it sounds so egotistical sometimes, but it's actually a file where if somebody pays me a compliment, I'll be like, thank you, that's so nice of you to say, I'll write it down. And then when I'm having a bad day, I'll go pay myself a bunch of compliments. I pick up the book and I'll flip to it and I'll be like, oh yeah, aw, and I'll feel that.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually one of my biggest mentors in university had like a very similar thing. He had all these stickers on his walls of people just writing him compliments, telling him how much they love him, how amazing it is, right? And like you'd walk in there and like you could feel the energy, because he was one of the happiest guys I've ever met in my life, because he was so full of love, right? He was giving kindness and he was giving away kindness. And it is this beautiful thing, right, of just constantly focusing on like what's also good about yourself, right? What do you love about yourself, right? And paying attention to that, because when you're in that state of mind, right, and I can see that you certainly are, then like it's so much easier to interact with people in a positive way, right? It's so much easier to help another person when you're feeling good about yourself. When you're happy, you're walking around, it's like sunshine, right? It's like it's just so much easier than when you're in this dark and gloomy place yourself.
Absolutely.
And so another thing that you talk about is that like actually the rock bottom can be one of the most powerful places to start this journey.
Oh boy.
So can you talk to us about like when people are they're feeling down and like they really don't feel like giving kindness to other people? Why is that actually maybe the time to start doing that?
Well, so I learned that lesson personally. This was a few years back. I had experienced a I was going through a rough time at that time. A few years ago, I was going through a breakup. At the same time, my business was struggling, and I had lost a business partner in the same time, and my business partner was taking away, and I felt like my life was down the dumps, right? I was going through an emotional breakup. My business was struggling. My personal life was all over the place, and I was at a friend's house at the time. And I had come out of we were watching a movie together, and they were trying to cheer me up. They were such sweethearts. They were trying to cheer me up. And I was driving back home, and I had thought of this experience that I had a few months back prior to that when I was in Nepal. And when I was in Nepal, basically someone helped and rescued me when I was stranded on the side of the road, and gave me a ride back to my hotel. And when he did that, he told me, "Look, I do this kindness for myself, not for you," because I was trying to thank him and give him gifts, and he was refusing all of it. So I thought of that. I was kind of like giving. Okay, well, I mean, what a strange idea, right? Like selfishness. I'm not a selfish guy. I'm not a selfish person. What do you mean you're like giving and being kind for yourself? And then while I was driving down the street, I see this guy on the side of the road, and this is like 2 a.m. or something like that. And I see this guy on the side of the road. And I realized I recognized him. He was somebody I knew. I wasn't very close with him as a friend or anything like that, but I recognized him. And I normally would just be like, "Oh, cool." I might like wave at him or just keep driving.
Just drive by.
Yeah, exactly. And being like, it's 2:00 in the morning. I'm exhausted. I'm still heartbroken. I've been crying.
Yeah, you got all your own problems, right?
To myself all night, right? I was like just going through the worst day. And I thought, what the heck? I'm already exhausted. What's one more? So I pulled over and I said, "Hey man, how are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, pretty good. I need to go pick up some groceries for tomorrow. I'm coming home. It's been a late night." And I thought, you know what? Hop in the car. I'll drive you to the grocery store. And he's like, no, I can't. We don't even know what grocery store is open at this time. And I said, you know what? Well, I'm making a mission. Hop in the car. We're gonna go find your grocery store. And we literally drove around downtown Vancouver, looking at 2 a.m. o'clock in the morning, looking place to place, seeing if we can find a grocery store open. And finally, we find this little grocery store that's open, this little bodega. And I was like, you know what? I'm coming with you. And we ended up taking a walk around, and I felt so much better because we got to connect. And he was telling me about his life, and I was telling him about my day. And we got some groceries. I drove him back home, dropped him back off, and that night I slept. I think the first time I slept well in probably almost a month.
Yeah.
And then the next day I just woke up and I just remember feeling, wow, I feel so much better. I feel happier. And I was just thinking back, I'm like, why? Why do I feel happier? Like, why do I feel less in pain? And I realized it was because of this little thing. It was just a human connection. And that was actually when the challenge started. That was the first act that went like, oh my God, I need to do way more of this. Like, whatever this is helping me go through a breakup. And, I need to do way more of this. And that was where the challenge really began. And I started doing this little challenge. And so every single year I do a challenge for myself, or I pick a little personal thing as an experiment just to try out for myself. So like one year I prepared for my own death. 1 year I did radical honesty. So that year I was like, okay, well, I'll start with a month of this, of just doing an act of kindness a day and see what that turns out. And like I said before, the first week was actually tougher than I thought it would be. I actually went like, I don't know what else to do. I ran out of China.
Right? Like you got to think of stuff.
Exactly. Like you wouldn't think it would be tough. But after a while, I realized that the third or fourth day, I was so filled with the brim with happiness. It was the kindness high was so present. I was just like excited. I was like a little puppy. I was walking out. I was like, is there something I can do for you? You there? Like I was like chasing people down. Like, do you need help? Like you're an old woman who's carrying groceries. For you. No, I'm not robbing you. I'm just going to carry the groceries. You person at the Starbucks, let me buy you a cup of coffee. No, it's not for sale. I'm just trying to be a good person. And then it became, I genuinely can say it was one of the most life-changing experiences where over the course of the month, I could track my mood just going up. It reversed what I was going through was, I was feeling very sad and hurt and angry all the time, but all of a sudden I started feeling happy all the time. So yes, absolutely. This is where the idea comes from is, go out there, do this, not just for others, but do it for yourself as well. Do it for yourself. Have the self-compassion and also practice it for yourself as well.
That is so fascinating. I absolutely love that story. So what point did this really become like just sort of your way of being? Because in the beginning, it sounds like you had to deliberately sort of plan and think about like, what am I gonna do now, right? And like, how can I? But like, at what point does it just like sort of become like you, and you just become this person that just is kind to other people?
I would say probably after the first couple of weeks, but there were a couple of experiences that I had that really shifted my perspective. One experience was when I was out with a group of friends and we were giving out clothing to homeless people on the street. This was a little bit in a colder time and a colder climate. We were giving away clothing, and one of the homeless people that come up was carrying with her this little bag of candy. And so we offered her, we have some gloves, we have some socks, we have, some scarves, and, take all of it. And she was like, thank you, thank you. And, within our group, one of our friends had a couple of kids with her, right? And so she turned around to the kids and said, would you like some candy? And you had to realize that, she looked quite disheveled. She had, certain signs that she may have been on drugs, certain track marks on her arms. And she did not look like she was, coming from a very healthy place at the time. So all of us as adults, our first reaction was a little bit of concern, but the kids didn't care. The kids just reached out and grabbed the candy and immediately ate it. And of course, we as adults were like, oh no, like, what do we do?
Is it cocaine?
Yeah, it's just like, is this okay? Exactly, maybe it's drugs. But for the first time, like in our entire interaction, this woman had this massive smile on her face.
Yeah.
Massive, like she was so lit up. It was like the sun had just come across her face. And she said, thank you. I've been giving away this candy for the last 2 months and nobody ever takes it.
Wow.
But you guys took it. Thank you. And that story, I think, was that experience that I had. And that story was probably one of the most influential. It was after that I realized, like, oh my God, this can't just be an experiment for me. This is a lifestyle. And after that, I would say every single day it became more. I stopped tracking it. Of course, we have these bracelets that you can get. You can do it for yourself too. You can just wear any bracelet, but we also provide these on our website. But it just says one kindness, and on the other side of it, it has a little check mark to help me remind me that I have finished it. And so after that week, I was paying attention to how many times I was able to flip this bracelet, how many times I had recognized I had done an act of kindness. And it got to a point in which I just couldn't keep track anymore because I was constantly looking for something to do. My mind was constantly searching. And then that became a part of who I am, I think. It rewrote, like I said, this rewires your brain. It rewires your brain to have more empathy. And I'm not saying this as a, look at how kind I am, because like I said, I think kindness we do for ourselves. I don't even actually talk about doing kind things anymore because it's not about me. It's not about anyone who does the kindness. It's about your own experience. It's about the connection. A kindness is a social contract between two people where they see each other as human beings, as equals, and as the heart-to-heart connection. So I think that was the point of transformation for me.
I love this so much. And what I find fascinating and what I really want to highlight then is also this idea of accepting the kindness, right? Like, so if you're that person that someone comes up to, right? And like you said, someone's handing out flowers or, whatever it is, or handing out candy, you're also going to be the one that accepts that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a funny thing you mentioned this because I had such a hard time with accepting things like compliments for the longest time.
Yeah.
I couldn't. If somebody paid me a compliment, my first reaction is, somebody said, "Hey, I like your hair today. Your hair looks good today." My first reaction is, no, and then I would just reject it and then be like, no, but you have a nice thing. And I would
you trying to give it back and
yeah, because I just had a hard time accepting it. And one day, and this is way before I experienced any of this, somebody just said to me, oh, wait, stop for a second. Just accept it, man. Like, it makes me feel bad because when you try to take away I'm trying to pay you a gift. And when you try to take that away, I don't get to give you my gift.
Wow.
And I went, oh my God, that's so true.
Yeah.
And so it's actually just as important for us to be receiving as it is for us to be giving as well. Because when we receive, we are also giving the gift of giving, right? Think about if those kids that day, told the woman, the homeless woman, like, no, we don't want your candy. Even if politely, even in a very, pleasant way of just like, oh, courteously, like, thank you for the candy. I don't want it. She wouldn't have gotten the gift that she felt that day. That was more important than any gift we were giving her. More important than the clothing we were giving her, right? Was that she got to feel that moment of human connection. So you're absolutely right. It's such an important thing that we practice receiving as well as we practice giving. When someone wants to accept it from us, to accept it before trying to return the gift and equalize the thing, just receive it and say, thank you. I'm so appreciative that you recognize that. That's, I did work on my hair,
I was like,
I really, thank you. And that really lightened up that day. So thank you for that. And not instinctively and immediately go, oh, no, I'm rejecting it and just trying to pay it back.
Yeah, I love this aspect of like acknowledging it, right? Acknowledging another person, acknowledging also the kindness and the effort that they bring into the thing, right? Like, because it is in a certain aspect, right? Of like you have to engage in a certain amount of effort, right? In order to do this kind of thing. And so I think acknowledging that and just appreciating it is so huge there. So I absolutely love that. So I'm super curious, like, how do you see this, I guess, difference between like size of the act and the frequency of it? So like where should people prioritize? Should they try to like do like one big thing a week, like plan this big party, or like try to like do these little things throughout the day, like, or a mix of those? Where do you see like the most impact?
Awesome question. Size of the act is always determined by you, but its impact is always determined by the receiver. So, I could spend 3 hours putting together a beautiful, like, I don't know, like cake bouquet, or whatever it is, putting together a beautiful gift, writing a beautiful card. And to somebody who receives it, I can't control that. Or I could pay a compliment to somebody who really needs it on one down day and, really like change how that person feels the day. I can't control that. But I could always control, I would say, how I want to feel in that moment. So I would say, generally speaking, the scientific answer to that is, the studies have shown, generally speaking, is small acts of kindness stacked across 3 to 5 days has the most return on investment, so to speak. You'll feel the best if you're doing about 1 to 3 small acts a day for about 3 to 5 days, something like that. And these small acts are determined by you, but usually there's a few key things. If you're not doing it, repeatedly the same thing every day. If, for example, I live in Canada, I'm very blessed now. A lot of people here are very polite. When I open a door for someone, it's just social graces. It's not a big deal. Yeah. But I had somebody who sent me a message who said, I opened the door for someone today and I felt amazing. And I think if I mentioned that to my friends here in Canada, they would look at them and be like,
isn't that what you do?
But to that person, so I sent a message back and I'm like, thank you for doing that. Because that's a big deal. That's a big act for you. And that's a big act because what you did was you thought about somebody else's experience. And that's what changes you. And they were so excited. They were like, oh my God, like, I opened the door with someone. They gave me eye contact. They thanked me. Like she put her hand on my hand and said, thank you so much. And then walked through and I was like, first and foremost, like, I can't imagine what that feels like to have that for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, good for you. So it's about variety. It's about your own feelings. It's about trusting your intuition and going with it. And I would say, typically speaking, if you can do both, great. If not, the small acts built out over habits will have a greater impact on your overall well-being and your mental health. than one big act. Not to say that one big act aren't great; those are so fantastic. And you know, a lot of people, some people have referenced to me. It's just like, oh well, you know, every 6 months I go out and do this, you know, but I don't feel happier for months afterwards. And I say, well, that's because you did one thing. Your brain kind of recognizes it as one thing. Mm-hmm. So multiple acts can be compounded to have a better return.
Yeah, you know, I love this so much. And also like this aspect of like the meaning we give to the things, right? So it's not inherently the thing. It's not like the inherent act of opening the door. It's a meaning we give to that thing, like the sort of story we create in our mind around opening a door and how it's going to change another person's life, right? And that at the end of the day is like what we're after, right? And so I find it truly fascinating how like it can be this incredibly individual thing. So whatever gives you that sense that like, hey, this is a kind thing, you go out and you do that, right? So I'm super curious, like, how has it evolved over time for you? I mean, just, you know, after years of doing this, like, how do you still, you know, every day go out and like try to find new things to like, you know, are you still trying to be sort of creative around things, or do you have sort of your favorite 5 go-to things that you do? And yeah.
I would say there's definitely a few habits that I've now built up that I kind of do without thinking anymore. The first one really is just reaching out, connecting with people. It's something that is small, and I think it's really hard to do during, you know, times like COVID and the pandemic, but it's also extra important. It's when you're just making eye contact and smiling at people. And some people are afraid, especially if you live in a big city that, you know, in which there's a little bit more, you know, hustle and bustle. Like, I have friends who live in New York, for example, who just like, you like go around smiling at people in New York.
Oh,
they're going to think you're crazy. Yeah. You know, like if you go around like telling people, like, you know, complimenting everybody on the subway, like people look at you like you're a crazy person. And my response to that is, so be a crazy person. You know,
love that.
Be a crazy person. Who cares? Who cares what they think?
Be a happy crazy person.
Right? Care about you anyway. Yeah, but like smile. And it's such a small thing. So one thing I did last week was you know, we were out at a restaurant, you know, socially distant, socially distancing, safe place. We're at a restaurant, and it was a really busy restaurant that day. You know, they had limited tables, long wait. It was a really popular restaurant. There was a lot of people. Everyone was, you know, going up to the host, you know, the hostess, and just like, you know, like demanding, like, we want a table now. We've been waiting. So when I got to the very front of the line, I knew this, and I've done this before, and I just said, hey, listen. You know, I'm just going to give you a moment here. I see that how busy you are, and I see how you're trying to handle all this. So I just want to offer you an opportunity. If you want to take a breath and relax for a moment, you're doing a great job. And I just want to say thank you so much for this work that you're doing, putting yourself here and facing all this.
Wow.
And she just had, like, she just paused. She breathed. She closed her eyes. She put her hand on her chest and just breathed. And you could tell, like, it was like a weight lifted off her shoulders. And I was like, oh, look, I'll keep talking to you, or pretending that we're talking.
Yeah.
So the other guests don't, you know, give you grief for this.
Wow, she probably never heard that before.
But she was just like, thank you. All she said, she was like, thank you. And I'm just like, yeah, not a problem. I really want to say appreciate you. And and then the funny thing is, she ended up boosting us on the list, and she just snapped right away while everyone else was waiting. But it was just such a small thing. Yeah. And I guess what I answer to your question of like, what are some of my go-tos? I would say my go-to is just paying attention. It's just paying attention to people, and in my mind thinking, you know, I wonder what that person's going through, and what is something that I can do to make that person's life better. And incidentally, this is something I do all the time, actually, you know, especially back when I was traveling a lot more and going to airports a lot of times, especially during times where there's a flight delay and you see how, you know, those flight attendants at the desk, those agents are getting yelled at by people. You know, sometimes it's going up there, and I would just go to the store. They always have convenience stores there, and I'll buy a little bag of candy, and I'll just put it on their desk, and I'll be like, thank you for your work. And it blows their mind.
Yeah.
Right? So that's such a small thing. You know, buying a cup of coffee, you know, starting a coffee chain when you're going to have a cup of coffee and being like, hey, I just want to buy a cup of, here's $5, buying a cup of coffee to the person behind me. You know, I'm not wealthy by any means, but I can afford an extra cup of coffee, can't I? Yeah, little things like that. Little things. And complimenting people whenever I see it. Whenever I get a chance. That's my favorite thing to do.
Wow,
favorite thing. If I could mention, I do it all the time. If I could like look over at someone and be like, hey man, like I just want to say, like, I like your shirt. something that I genuinely really like, I pay attention to it. And if you want, I'll share, there's an important thing that I'll note. A lot of people are not aware that the way you pay a compliment, there's a technique.
Yes, please.
Because a lot of people, they fear being seen as like sucking up, right?
Yeah.
Like, if they pay too many people compliments, they're going to see us as sucking up to somebody. But there's a sort of secret to paying a compliment. So there's sort of 3 steps. The first step is you pay someone the compliment and you say, hey, listen, I just want to say, hey, this shirt looks fantastic, or whatever it is, or like, you're a great speaker. So that's the step 1, is paying them a compliment. And then a lot of people's first reaction is to go into rejection. So we know that people go into rejection. So the second step we go into is give them reasoning behind it. So say, hey, I noticed that you do this, and I just want to say I love the way you do this thing, or I love your shirt because this color really like lights up the room.
Yeah. Wow.
And then the third step is asking them a question about it, which allows them to internalize the compliment and let it set it in. So oftentimes people are like, do you mind if I ask, where did you get it? Or, and I was just wondering, like, do you have other pieces that are like this? Or, do you follow any, inspiration trends or stuff like that? And oftentimes after these steps, people are able to accept the compliment with much more ease, and they feel I think the sincerity behind it more, with those 3 steps. So again, 3 steps. Number 1, give them the compliment. 2, give them the reasoning behind it. So it's not just like you're just randomly throwing compliments. And number 3 is, like asking them a question, allowing them to contribute to that as a discussion. You don't have to do this all the time. Most of the time I'm on the street, I'm not going to run out to a random stranger. Yeah. I'll, give them like a 30-second speech, but I'll just be like, oh yeah, nice shirt, man. But if it was something I know or a friend, oftentimes I'll take a little more time.
Yeah, I love this so much. And I think what all of this seems to go back is just more mindfulness as we go throughout the day, right? It's like paying attention more, like getting out of our head and like out into the world and looking at people, looking into their eyes, looking into their faces, looking at like how they clothe and how they dress and how they show up, right? And like trying to like be a little bit more empathetic, right? Of like how they're feeling, and then really start to like go deep and specific. It sounds like around like, doing these things, not just the superficial, like, yeah, I like this, but like actually going deep and saying like, hey, this is why. And I truly, I can only like acknowledge like what he said. Like when people actually go that deep, right? When like they pay me like a compliment like that, like it is so much more powerful, right? Because you truly feel like the other person paid attention and they truly care and they truly mean it. And so I absolutely love what he's saying here. I think super powerful. Now, John, we talked about a lot of great things today. So if you could give our listeners just, one specific kindness challenge maybe to take away and to start implementing today, what would be one small thing that every one of our listeners could do starting today?
I would say today, send a message of appreciation to somebody who you haven't connected with in a while. That's the easiest thing you can do. It takes 5 seconds. A lot of times, people who I've spoken to who are also on the challenge, they'll send a note, especially to the old, high school teachers, that person that really changed their lives, or someone they know, or they'll write a little Post-it note if they have a Post-it note aside, or just write a very simple, just like, thank you for whatever it is. And they'll literally just take the little Post-it note, stick it on someone's computer, like in their office, stick it on someone's computer, leave it in someone to be found, and leave it to, their husband, their wives, their kids, or whatever it is. And they've basically said that it is the smallest thing that have reaped massive differences. They have had people come back to them and like, write back massive emails of being like, thank you so much for, I just got this message. I was going through a hard time and I saw your message. All that kind of things, transformational change.
Absolutely love that. So for all of our listeners, do it right now before we even get off this friggin' show. Now, before we wrap it up here, where can our listeners connect with you and the challenge online? So where can people learn more about this, sign up for the challenge, all of that?
Absolutely. You can go and check out our website. It's www.onekindness.org. It's all spelled out ONEKINDNESS.org. So onekindness.org, you can find all of our information there. As well, you can also find our Instagram account at onekindness. And on our website, you can also find more ideas for kindness acts, the challenge package itself. If you are involved with a school or organization, we have specialized pages just for them. So these are the places you can go. But really, just start doing it. Just start today. See how it feels. Try it out for yourself. If you do not see a change, a massive change in how you feel after 1 week of this, let me know, because I still haven't met someone who hasn't experienced it yet.
Absolutely love that. Now, to wrap it up, what does it mean for you to max out your life?
Oh, it's a great question. I think maxing out my life is making sure that I am honoring my experiences and contributing to experiences of others. So if I can look at my day at the end of the day and I ask, did I do something for someone else today? And I ask, did I do something for myself today? And if I answer yes to both and feel a bit of gratitude for that, I have maxed out my life.
Absolutely love that. Hey, John, thank you so much for coming in the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, guys, that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you gained some valuable ideas, tips, tools, tricks, mindsets, belief systems that will hopefully inspire you to take your life to the next level. At the end of the day, guys, it's all about application. The only thing that's going to set you apart tomorrow from where you are today is how much action you take with those ideas that you gained. And so I really want to challenge you at this point to, not just listen to this passively, to not just consume this, passively, just think about other things, but to really take those lessons, take those ideas that you just gained and start applying them to your lives, to really start taking action and sprinting towards those goals and those dreams that you have in your life. Now, guys, at this point, I want to ask you for a huge favor. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider heading over to iTunes and leaving a review, as that helps me really grow the show and reach more people, impact even more people around the world. If you have a family member, friend, a loved one maybe, that you think could benefit from this content, please consider, sharing it with them, forwarding to them, as that helps us really build a community of like-minded people that are all about maxing out their lives. Now, guys, with that being said, thanks so much for tuning in today. I really, really appreciate it. Stay strong and see you tomorrow.